You say you want abundance. You visualize it. You affirm it. You chase it. You try to stay high vibration and keep your mindset positive. But deep down, something keeps pulling you back. Something heavy. Something you can feel every time opportunity gets close to you. It's the hesitation you can't explain. The anxiety that rises when things start improving. The discomfort you feel when you begin to succeed. The sudden fear that shows up right when abundance is within reach. It feels like an invisible wall, not outside you, but inside you. A pressure in your chest, a tightening in your stomach, a voice that whispers, "Not yet, not you, not this time." And no matter how many times you try to push forward, you find yourself pulled back into the same financial patterns, the same emotional cycles, the same familiar limits, and you start to wonder, why do I shut down when abundance gets close? Why do I feel unworthy even when I'm doing everything right? Why does growth feel unsafe? Why do I sabotage myself the moment things improve? You may not realize it, but this is one of the most common human experiences. Not because people don't want abundance, but because abundance touches the emotional wounds they never learned to heal. Here's the truth most people never face. Your abundance isn't blocked by your mindset. It's blocked by your emotional conditioning. The emotions you learned to suppress, the ones you were punished for expressing, the ones you were never allowed to feel, the ones you stored in your body because you didn't have the power or the support to process them when they first formed. These unhealed emotional imprints became the limits your life now lives inside. And abundance, real abundance, activates those emotions instantly. Not because abundance is dangerous, but because it threatens the self-image you built for survival. Until you understand these emotional blocks, where they came from, why they formed, and what they're trying to protect, you will continue pushing abundance away even while consciously begging for it. But once you understand the truth behind them, abundance stops feeling like a threat and starts feeling like something you're finally able to receive. Everything begins to change when you learn what those emotional blocks actually are. Most people believe their abundance is limited by mindset, effort, or strategy. But that's not where the real blocks are. Your abundance is shaped by something deeper, the emotional patterns formed in childhood and early experience, when your nervous system was learning what was safe and what was dangerous. Your subconscious doesn't decide based on logic. It decides based on emotional memory. And here's the truth most people never realize. Your nervous system will reject abundance if abundance feels emotionally unsafe. If receiving made you feel guilty, you will unconsciously push away gifts, support, and opportunities. If money caused conflict in your home, you will fear what having more might do to your relationships. If success made someone else jealous, you will dim your light to keep the peace. If love was unpredictable, you will close yourself off to protect the younger version of you who got hurt. These emotional imprints become the internal alarms that activate the moment your life begins to expand. Your conscious mind says, "I'm ready for more," but your emotional body says, "More hurt me before." And that emotional memory wins every time. Not because you are weak, not because you're self-sabotaging on purpose, but because your emotions were coded to protect you from anything that once caused pain. So when abundance gets close, your nervous system interprets it through the lens of your past. More responsibility? Danger. More visibility? Threat. More success? Rejection. More money? Conflict. More happiness? Loss. This is why abundance feels heavy for you, why receiving feels uncomfortable, why holding on to good things feels harder than pursuing them. There's a part of you, a younger, unhealed part, that never learned abundance was safe. Until that emotional imprint is addressed, your subconscious will continue guiding you back to familiar limits, because familiar feels safer than expansion ever has. But here's the deeper truth, one that opens a door to real transformation. Your emotional blocks were formed in moments when you didn't have power, but you're not that version of yourself anymore. And the moment you understand what those blocks are protecting, you gain the ability to release them without force, without pressure, and without fear. What happens next is the beginning of emotional unwinding, the gentle shift that teaches your nervous system that abundance is no longer a threat. There comes a moment when you begin to realize something profound. Your emotional blocks were never flaws. They were forms of protection. Not protection for the person you are today, but protection for the person you once were, the younger you, the overwhelmed you, the unprepared you, the version of you who didn't have the power to process big emotions, to set boundaries, to understand why people acted the way they did, or to protect yourself from experiences too heavy for a developing mind. So your subconscious created emotional walls to keep you safe. If attention brought criticism, you learned to stay small. If expressing needs led to rejection, you learned to stay quiet. If happiness was followed by punishment, you learned not to get too excited. If wanting more caused conflict, you learned to want less. These weren't weaknesses. These were survival strategies. But here's the part most people never understand. What once kept you safe now keeps you stuck. Not because the block is powerful, but because the world it was designed for no longer exists. You are not that child anymore. You are not that powerless. You are not that unprotected. You are not that isolated. You are not that unprepared. And yet your emotional system still guards you as if you are. This is the conflict you feel inside. The adult part of you reaching forward while the wounded part of you pulls back. The desire for abundance clashing with the fear of what abundance once cost you. The ambition to rise, battling the old emotional imprint that says rising is dangerous. The part of you that wants expansion, meeting the part of you programmed to avoid loss, conflict, or visibility. This is why your progress feels inconsistent, not because your goals are wrong, but because your emotional system is trying to protect a version of you who doesn't exist anymore. And the shift, the real shift, begins the moment you feel compassion instead of frustration toward these emotional blocks. Because they're not your enemies, they're your younger self's last attempt to keep you safe. And when you see them that way, your relationship to them changes. You stop fighting your resistance. You start understanding it. You stop forcing breakthroughs. You start healing the parts of you that learned abundance was unsafe. This understanding is the doorway, the moment your subconscious becomes ready to update its rules, to rewrite its protections, and to finally allow abundance to enter your life without triggering alarm. What comes next is how you begin that unwinding in a way your mind and emotions can actually accept. You don't dissolve emotional blocks by forcing yourself to be positive, by pretending you're not triggered, or by trying to outthink emotions that were never created through thought. You dissolve emotional blocks by giving your nervous system a new experience of safety, not in giant leaps, not in overwhelming breakthroughs, but in small, steady moments that teach your emotional body a truth it has never known. Abundance is not a threat anymore. And the simplest way to begin this shift is through something most people overlook. Practice receiving in small ways so your system learns that receiving is safe. Not money, not opportunities, not life-changing gifts, just the smallest forms of allowing. Let someone compliment you without deflecting it. Let someone hold the door without shrinking. Let someone offer help without apologizing. Let yourself rest without earning it. Let yourself enjoy something without guilt. These micro moments teach your subconscious we can receive without being hurt. We can allow without losing control. We can accept without consequences. This is how emotional blocks begin to loosen, because abundance isn't just money or success. Abundance is the capacity to receive. And if your emotional body has never felt safe receiving, your subconscious will always limit what your conscious mind asks for. Small acts of receiving are not insignificant. They are neural signals. They are emotional reminders. They are the new evidence your subconscious needs to rewrite the outdated story it's been protecting for years. Over time, these moments create a new emotional baseline, one where ease doesn't trigger fear, where support doesn't trigger guilt, where expansion doesn't trigger resistance, and where abundance no longer conflicts with your inner sense of safety. And once your emotional body begins to trust the experience of receiving, your mind no longer needs to fight itself to allow more into your life. This is the beginning of opening, the softening of old defenses, the rewiring of emotional memory. What comes next is the deeper realization, the understanding that abundance is not something you chase, but something you become able to hold. There comes a moment, quiet, subtle, but unmistakable, when you begin to feel something inside you soften. The tension you once carried around abundance starts to loosen. The heaviness you felt when opportunities arrive begins to lift. What once triggered fear now stirs curiosity. What once felt dangerous now feels possible. This is the moment when emotional blocks begin to lose their power, not because you forced yourself to be stronger, but because you finally understand what those blocks were protecting. They weren't trying to hold you back. They were trying to keep you safe in the only way your younger self knew how. And when you honor that truth, when you meet your resistance with compassion instead of frustration, something transformational happens. Your subconscious no longer sees abundance as a threat. It begins to see it as a home. And the moment abundance becomes emotionally safe, your entire life rearranges. You stop sabotaging opportunities. You stop shrinking when good things appear. You stop doubting your worth every time you rise. You stop expecting loss the moment you feel joy. You begin to live from a place your nervous system has never been, a place where receiving feels natural, where expansion feels steady, where your old story no longer chooses your future. And as this shift deepens, you realize something powerful. Abundance was never blocked by the universe. It was never withheld from you. It was never out of reach. It was simply incompatible with the emotional world you learned to survive in. But now, you're not surviving. You're evolving. You're stepping into a life that doesn't mirror your past. It mirrors the identity you started to embrace. And as your emotional system learns to trust this new version of you, your capacity to receive expands without resistance. That is when abundance stops feeling like a dream and starts becoming your reality, not through pressure, not through force, but through alignment. You don't chase it. You don't beg for it. You don't fight for it. You grow into it. And when you do, abundance doesn't just enter your life, it stays.